Hi, my name is Alex and I build B2B products at SAP and Signavio, and this is the first episode in the Key SaaS Metrics and Analytics series. In this video I want to talk about a very common pain I see in B2B SaaS teams, when the metrics look right but decisions still feel wrong, and how we can fix this situation. When I talk to colleagues or other product managers about the health of their SaaS offerings, one thing that almost inevitably comes up in conversation is this: we are measuring the right things, so we know if we are doing well. Sounds fair. We are living in a data-driven age. Our offices are lit up with data visualizations, reports roll into inboxes every day, every week, every quarter, growth tracks adorn the boards in executive meetings. However, based on my experience, the data can be deceiving, not necessarily because the data is false, but because we are asking the wrong questions of the data. The SaaS market is thriving and it is expected to be a $720 billion market by 2028, and as you can see based on the numerous articles and books, this has led to a huge number of different metrics. Enterprise product metrics are segmented into product experience, customer success, and financial. Yet, despite the availability of all this data, we all know that the organizations are making poor decisions. The assumption that tracking the right numbers leads to the right decisions is based on several grounds. First, metrics are objective. The numbers will not lie to you, so if you know the numbers, you know the truth. Second, the more data, the better understanding. If you are monitoring dozens of KPIs in each department, you will be able to spot problems early. Third, the numbers speak for themselves. It will become clear from the figures what you should do. But unfortunately, the metrics will only give you the answer to the questions you ask. If your questions contain errors, are incomplete or slanted, then the answer will point you down the wrong path. And in this video, I would like to discuss which the most common problems during the work with metrics and data lead to incorrect, product-harming conclusions and decisions, and what are the ways to avoid them. Let's take a look at three structural reasons metrics mislead us. First, they are frequently lagging indicators disguised as signals. Lagging metrics are telling you what happened after the fact. In the SaaS world, metrics such as churn, monthly recurring revenue, or net promoter score are all examples of lagging metrics. These metrics will give you the data you need to ensure your past approaches actually led to success, but these metrics are not the best way to make adjustments on the fly. When you see a spike in your churn, the issues of confusion in onboarding, a lack of perceived value, or incorrect expectations are issues you could have addressed 6 months prior. When you are only looking at the data of lagging metrics, you are always behind. Second, they reduce complex systems to a single number. There are multiple personas in SaaS solutions used in the enterprise. For example, end users, administrators, and decision-making C-level users. These solutions provide different workflows. Let's simplify it for now to data entry, analysis, and collaboration tools. To reduce these to a single number in the adoption rate or an average score in engagement metrics would be to overlook valuable insights. A high rate of adoption can be a false indicator that some personas have never attained the aha moment. Net promoter score can be high even when administrators are frustrated by the levels of complexity in configuration. Third, they inherit the assumptions of the organization that created them. Apparently, metrics aren't objective. They contain a worldview. If the leadership team is convinced that the path to growth is to deliver new features, then metrics will track the rate at which features are shipped and feature adoption. If they are convinced that customers leave because sales quality is bad, then metrics will track the sources of leads and the pipeline. And if they think customers are resistant to change, then metrics might not care about product usability at all. Another contributing factor is the rise of vanity metrics, which refer to numbers that give you a good feeling but don't really contribute to your strategy. Vanity metrics refer to numbers that give you ego boost but don't contribute to good decision making. These metrics are including things like page views, sign-ups in your free trial, app downloads or social media fans. All of them can give you the wrong information. Conversely, decision grade metrics provide clarity on the actions to be taken in the next step. These metrics provide answers to questions like what is the cause of the drop-off in the onboarding processes, or which group of customers is most likely to churn in the next quarter. These metrics provide clarity on the status quo and ability to measure the effect of change through segmentation, context, and the distinction between leading and lagging indicators. The Gainsight Guide to Enterprise Product Metrics breaks down product metrics into three types, which I already mentioned before: product experience metrics, customer success, and financial metrics. These types of metrics are based on cause and effect relationships, where economic success can only be achieved through customer success, which can only be achieved when users are able to use the product. Product experience metrics are used to determine whether users are successfully using the products, like conversion rate, daily and monthly active users, adoption rate, and so on. Customer success metrics are used to determine customer renewal and advocacy. NPS and retention rate would be the examples here. This is important as it allows you to understand the source of the issue. A drop in daily active users will inevitably lead to a drop in retention. However, not all PX data is created equal. Slack proudly boasts over 10 million daily active users. This is a good indicator of size, but it is not an indicator of whether a subset is getting value. You can have millions of users, but if the decision makers never log in, the threat of renewal is still present. So let's take a look at the most common scenarios that could go wrong during your work with metrics. First possible scenario is when healthy adoption hides role-based risk. Let's take an example of a B2B SaaS application that offers analytics to the operational teams and executive level reporting. They track metrics such as monthly active users, adoption rate, as well as Net Promoter Score. This metrics looks good. 80% adoption rate, healthy growth in monthly active users, as well as a Net Promoter Score of +40. They think the product is in good health. They have decided to invest in features to upsell the product. A few months later, renewal conversations with a significant client hit a snag. The champion raises issues. Executives here have not logged into our solution in months. They do not see the strategic value. Our operational teams do use the solution, but we cannot justify the cost of the organization in whole. Churn risk comes out of nowhere, or at least that's what it looks like. However, the reality is that the risk was present all along. The metrics were summed up across all roles, hence the fact that executives were disengaged was never visible. The adoption metric gave us insight that 80% of users were active, but it didn't give us insight into what type of users was falling off. The NPS was positive because the operational users loved the product, while the executives were detractors, albeit not very representative in the sample. The data never lied, however, the way data was aggregated and interpreted did. In my experience, the solution to this problem is segmentation. You should track how the product is being adopted by different personas. You should also track how different people in the organization are using the product's features. You can also develop a metric for executive login frequency as well as time to first executive insight. It also makes sense to discover that even as the people operating the product enjoy its use, the same cannot be said for the people in executive positions. This will help you make improvements to the products for the people in executive positions, thus minimizing the chance of renewal risks. Second possible scenario is with AI feature adoption, when novelty disguises failure. If your SaaS application has a feature of, for example, recommending insights using AI, you might track how many of your users activate it. If your application has a high adoption rate of the feature within the first 6 weeks, your product managers might celebrate this. However, adoption metrics also don't show whether the feature actually created a lasting value. Then over time, more support tickets are filled. People complain that the recommendations are confusing. People get bored with the feature, then the renewal calls come in and show that the customers are not even considering the ROI for the AI feature because it isn't relevant to their workflow. So why was the metric misleading? Because it was one thing to enable a feature and another to derive value from it. Having leading metrics like AI feature engagement per workflow or impact on user task completion time would have helped understand that the adoption was superficial. The third is one of my favorites, the Net Promoter Score paradox. Net Promoter Score continues to be a widely used tool because it's easy to compute. Simply subtract detractors from promoters. It's a valuable tool, but it has its flaws if used in isolation. For example, let's assume that the SaaS firm has an NPS of plus 50 points. This is great for the directors because marketing team can include the NPS in their marketing campaign for the brand. However, if you dig deeper into the situation, you can find that the people who answer the NPS survey questions aren't the administrators who handle the billing of the service or the directors who negotiate the service contracts. In fact, renewal rates for the average customers are declining. NPS is only meaningful when used with other metrics. It needs to be analyzed across personas related to adoption and retention and measured long ways. Also, watch out for patterns like promoters churn after 6 months because they never expand usage, or detractors complain about onboarding complexities. The drawback is that NPS does not tell you what drives a promoter or detractor to feel that way, nor does it tell if they have buying power. So unfortunately, having a good NPS does not preclude having high churn. Next scenario is about MRR versus revenue with understanding lagging indicators. In my experience, MRR is frequently considered a simple, real-time measure of revenue, but in fact it is a trailing metric that is calculated by taking contracts signed over a year or multiple years and extrapolating them into a single month. It lets you know how many dollars your subscriptions are currently generating for you, but not if they are sustainable. What is also important is contract structures. Annual contracts can be spread evenly over 12 months to smooth out seasonality or deferred revenue effects. We also should not forget expansion versus contraction rates. The customer base of a company may experience upsells in some accounts but experience contraction in smaller accounts. And discounting. While discounted offers can increase MRR, it will also affect the overall profitability. Another important issue is revenue recognition rules. Bookings are not revenue until service is rendered. Upfront payments are not necessarily indicative of service consumption. If we are not aware of these details, it is possible to think everything is fine with your business based on your MRR growth, and then realize at some point that your cancellations and non-renewals offset your growth. If your MRR is going down, it is already too late to try to retain customers who are churned. The warning signs were in your leading indicators. And the last scenario I want to mention is the risk of focusing on the wrong metrics. Vanity metrics provide clarity but also lead you astray. Your traffic might increase, your signs up might rise and your followers might grow, but this might not be qualified visitors. Your sign-ups might not activate and your followers might not convert. Vanity metrics might appear to be impressive but don't provide any meaningful insights. And for me, too many metrics create information overload. For example, if we were talking to a marketing team that had just seen their blog post go viral, resulting in 100,000 page views, they may have made a slide deck celebrating this success. However, if we were to ask them questions like how many leads were generated out of this traffic, what percentage of their trials were converted, and what their cost per acquisition was, they may have no idea. The metric looked good, they didn't just correlate it to anything else. Another example could be that if we were talking to a product team, they may be tracking the number of free trials they have. Free trials can be great if they are leading to future revenue, but if they don't ever become paying users, then this metric does not correlate to anything else. Instead, they should be tracking their free to paid conversion rate. The fix for this is to map the metrics to the customer journey. Identify metrics for measuring how prospects are moving through the customer journey of awareness, evaluation, onboarding, adoption, value realization, and advocacy. Metrics to use include here: are the right prospects hearing about us? Are trial users reaching first value? Are key personas engaged? And are accounts expanding? And I want to mention about another possible deeper issues: misaligned incentivize and fractured funnels. Metrics can also be misleading due to organizational silos. Marketing will care about lead metrics, product will care about feature metrics, customer success will care about churn, and finance will care about revenue. They will all build their own dashboards that are optimized around their parts of the funnel. However, without a common view of the overall customer flow, metrics can often be in opposition to one another. We will also need to contend with time horizons. For marketers, it's monthly campaigns. For customer success teams, it's quarterly renewal. For finance teams, it's a yearly revenue. A leading indicator of a problem, decreasing time on site, may not be addressed until it impacts a lagging indicator, churn. Therefore, you need a cross-functional dashboard that reflect the entire customer experience. Leading indicators of marketing success, traffic quality, and event attendance need to roll into product adoption indicators, activation rate, and time to first value, which in turn roll into customer success indicators and finally into financial indicators. Sounds a bit tricky, I understand, but when you see a drop in a daily active users in a particular persona segment, you can make adjustments in marketing, improve onboarding in products, and influence sales. So how do we create metrics that reduce uncertainty and lead to better decisions? Here are the steps which I drawn from the best practices across SaaS leaders. Instead of a metric, it is useful to ask a question: what's the decision we want to make? Are you thinking in terms of features, budget, churn? The question should inform the decision regarding the appropriate metric to use. For example, want to understand how our onboarding process is working? Then define metrics such as percentage of users completing first value within 7 days or time to complete important onboarding activities. Next, segment by persona and cohort. Don't average. Measure separately by decision maker, champions, administrators, and end users. Compare new customer cohorts by channel or by industry. Identify trends. Is there a drop-off in adoption after month 3? Do some industries lack in first time to value? Segmentation uncovers unknown risks and opportunities. Then, combine leading and lagging indicators. Design a series of dashboards that display a chain of leading indicators and lagging outcomes. A simple example of this could look like this: first pipeline volume, then trial activation, then product adoption, then retention and revenue. When a change occurs in a leading metric, a change will also happen in a lagging metric. Define health scores that combine multiple metrics. It is better to stop tracking multiple metrics individually and define health scores that take into account product usage, support tickets, net promoter score, and license utilization. Health scores can be used for taking action by the customer success team. Next, behavioral metrics should be emphasized. For AI-related features, the number of recommendations should be measured to determine the amount of save times. Then, correlate metrics with outcomes. While it is easy to track adoption as a metric, the key is to correlate adoption with outcomes like expansion or retention. Use analytics to determine if users who completed a tutorial are likely to renew or if customers with a high NPS are likely to expand. If the leading metric is changing but does not actually lead to the outcomes, we need to adjust the metric. And by the way, the last is review and adjust continuously. Your metrics are hypotheses. When a metric no longer predicts outcomes, we need to change it. It's also important to regularly evaluate whether or not you are taking the right action through your dashboards. In order to understand the concept of actionable metrics in detail, let's take an example of a SaaS platform that has thousands of teams using it. Earlier, the company was tracking DAU and MRR. DAU was increasing over time and MRR was increasing steadily. During the renewal process, the churn rates increased. The team dug deeper. They broke down the DAU into personas. While the average user is engaged on a daily basis, administrators were logging in very infrequently. They also took a closer look at onboarding. They realized many users never completed the tutorial. They also related usage patterns to churning users. Users with fewer than 5 integrations configured were 3 times more likely to churn. So they developed a health score based on integrations configured, dashboard activity, NPS, and support ticket sentiment. This predicted churning with a very high accuracy. With this understanding, they redesigned onboarding to facilitate integration setup sooner. They used personalization to send messages to the customer when their health score went down to a specific threshold. Marketing used segmentation to send educational information to the administrators. As a result, during the next 2 quarters, churn went down, upsells went up, and NPS improved. It turned out that the metrics had not been lying to them, they had simply been incomplete. They had been asking the right questions and had used segmentation to turn metrics into decisions. And in the end, I would like to say a few words about the human element. Metrics don't replace judgments, they are tools to assist in your judgments. They are not replacements for your own ability to look at the patterns. It's very tempting to say, the metrics forced me to make the decisions. But good product leadership is about using metrics in conjunction with domain expertise, customer understanding, and strategy. So, to recap, MRR, churn, and NPS are lagging indicators. Lagging indicators are useful for historical interpretation, but not for predicting the future. Adoption rates, daily active users, or pipeline volumes are leading indicators that predict future events, while combining them with lagging indicators will give a view of the entire chain from cause to effect. Vanity metrics like page views or sign-ups might look impressive on paper, yet they do nothing to help you make decisions. Instead, you should look for metrics that help you answer a very specific question. Segmentation and context are also important. The aggregate metrics may not show risk. Segmenting metrics into personas and workflows will show trends. Metrics have built-in assumptions. Be careful how your perspective influences your metrics. Ask yourself whether your metrics support your strategy. Metrics are basically hypotheses. They are used to validate your understanding of the business. They should be refined when they are no longer predicting an outcome. This was the first episode in Key SaaS Metrics and Analytics video series. In the next one, we are going to tackle one of the most misused metrics out there, monthly recurring revenue. We are going to walk through the common misunderstandings about how to use it to make poor products and pricing decisions. We'll dive into how it is actually calculated and how it is a lagging metric. Thank you for watching, and remember, data doesn't have to lie, you just have to ask the right questions.